Chicago is not the most corrupt American city, it is the most theatrically corrupt. That is a quote from Studs Terkel, and honestly, being here in the heart of the Windy City, you can almost feel the weight of those words in the architecture and the energy of the streets. Thank you guys so much for coming out here to Chicago to hang with me. Since we are standing on Illinois soil, we really need to have a serious talk about public pension systems across America because the reality is pretty damn sobering. I hate to be the bearer of bad news for you guys and for your future tax payments, but Illinois ranks right at the rock bottom in terms of the funded status of its pension. A huge chunk of the systemic issues we see in this state right now exist because the pension system is legally written into a corner that it can tee back out of. But before we dive into the local drama, let's zoom out and look at the macro view of public finance and the absolute crisis brewing in the U.S. pension system as a whole. There are 50 states in this country, and every single one of them runs a pension system for their public employees. Right now, we have about 13.6 million active public workers paying into the system and 11.1 million retirees drawing from it. Oh shit, that ratio is almost 1 to 1. And if you know anything about math, you know that is a massive red flag. When you have almost as many people taking money out as you have putting money in, the system starts to buckle under its own weight. This is exactly why state taxes have been creeping up year after year, just to finance these massive mounting obligations. The public pension system across all 50 states is actually the second biggest pension system on the entire planet. The only thing bigger is the federal Social Security system itself. As of 2025, we are looking at about $6.7 trillion in combined pension assets, which sounds like a lot of money until you see the other side of the ledger. On top of that mountain of cash, there is another $1.5 trillion in promised payments that are currently labeled as unfunded liabilities. Basically, the median state in America has about 80% of its pension funded, meaning for every $5 they promise to pay, they only actually have 4. Now, believe it or not, this is actually an improvement compared to where we were a decade ago. Back in 2015, when I started digging into this, the median state was sitting at a measly 72 to 74% funding level. We've had 18 consecutive years where the pension system in this country has stayed below the 90% healthy threshold. The main catalyst that sent us into this tailspin was the global financial crisis in 2008, which absolutely shredded equity portfolios. And the timing could have been worse because that was exactly when the boomers started hitting retirement age in massive waves. So you had the liabilities shooting through the roof at the exact same time the market decided to take a giant dump. But we need to look closer at this recent improvement because it was usually because of some brilliant policy shift or fiscal responsibility. It was mostly just the market giving us a gift. Since 2015, the SP 500 has literally tripled in value. Private equity and private credit also had absolute banner years during this period. Yet despite the best bull market in human history, funding only improved by 10%. Think about that for a second. If you can get solvent during a record-breaking 10-year rally, what the hell happens when the market turns choppy? The data shows that pretty much every pension fund in the country actually underperformed a simple 60/40ths index. For those who don't know, a 60/40ths index is just 60% stocks and 40% bonds, the bread and butter of wealth management. Why did these expert pension managers fail to beat a basic benchmark? First, a lot of these investments are driven by political motivations rather than pure returns. Maybe the fund manager has connections to power, or maybe they're rechasing ESG mandates that prioritize social ideology over maximizing your retirement check. And let us be real, if you a genius at investing, you aren't working a government job for a below market salary, you restarting your own hedge fund, or working at a top tier RIA where you can get those massive performance bonuses instead of paying football coaches the highest state salaries. We probably should be paying the pension fund managers more because their performance affects every single taxpayer's wallet. After 2008, states also started rolling out two-tiered benefit systems to try and slow the bleeding. If you got a job before 2011, you have one set of rules, but if you started after that, your benefits were likely cut or switched to a partial contribution plan. This has helped lower future liabilities, but it creates a weird generational divide in the public workforce. Let us look at the winners for a second. There are only 3 states that are fully solvent with over 100% funding. Shout out to Tennessee, South Dakota, and Washington State for actually managing their math correctly. Then you have the honor students like Wisconsin, Oregon, Idaho, and Utah sitting in the 90s. You notice that this is in a red state versus blue state thing. It's a competence versus incompetence thing. Now let us talk about the bottom of the barrel, the states below 60% funding. For every dollar they have, they basically owe an entire other dollar that they don't have. Illinois, of course, is the absolute worst at 52% funded. And even that 52% is considered an improvement because you guys were at 38% back in 2015. Kentucky is at 54%. New Jersey at 55%, and Mississippi at 56%. Again, it's 2 red states and 2 blue states. So stop blaming the political party and start looking at the management. These states are also consistently ranked as some of the most politically corrupt in the entire union. There is a massive negative correlation between perceived corruption and pension health when money is supposed to be saved for your retirement, but it gets diverted to personal pet projects or graft. The fund dies a death of 1,000 cuts. Then you have the per capita debt, which is how much every single citizen owes to cover these public worker pensions. In Illinois, every man, woman, and child technically owes about $16,000 in pension debt. Connecticut is at $10,000. Alaska and Hawaii are right behind them near $9,800. In places like Hawaii, a huge percentage of the population is already on some form of government retirement, creating a massive dependency ratio. West Virginia actually made a massive sustainable improvement by restructuring how they pay employees and saving surpluses. New Jersey, on the other hand, just raised taxes to throw a one-time lump sum at the problem, which isn't exactly a long-term fix. So how do we actually fix this mess going forward? Most politicians have a strategy that I call hope and pray. They just hope the SP 500 keeps going up by double digits forever. But hope is not a strategy. The other options are mandating higher contributions from employees, cutting benefits, or creating more two-tiered systems, or, and this gets morbid, you just hope that retirees don't live as long as the tables suggest. But the highest paid employees who have the biggest pensions also tend to have the longest lifespans. If you in the top 10% of income earners, you likely living until 90, which means the state has to pay you for a very, very long time. Another elephant in the room is the assumed rate of return. States like Illinois use a high discount rate, often assuming 7% or 8% returns, just to make the liability look smaller on paper. A realistic return for a pension fund that needs to pay out every year should probably be closer to 5%. If they lowered those expectations to reality, the unfunded liability numbers would absolutely explode overnight. So why is Illinois in a unique bind compared to everyone else? Because in the Illinois Constitution, it is literally illegal to cut pensions. You cannot restructure them, you cannot reduce them, you are locked into a trajectory that is mathematically insolvent. When a business can pay its bills and can cut costs, it goes bankrupt. But states don't really file for bankruptcy. It hasn't happened in a major way since Arkansas during the Great Depression. So if you can file for bankruptcy and you can cut the pensions, what is the only lever left to pull? You raise taxes. And that is exactly what is happening here. Income taxes went from 3 to 5%. Sales taxes are some of the highest in the country, and property taxes are absolutely brutal. They will continue to nickel and dime you because they have no other choice. They could try to grow the economy, but the regulatory environment in Chicago is so thick with vested interests that it's not exactly business friendly. And even if they try to growth-led policy, they can afford the early deficits that usually come with tax cuts. So they keep raising taxes, and then the doom loop kicks in. People start moving out, and Chicago is a great city. Don't get me wrong, I love it here in the summer, but the geography is unique enough to hold people captive. California has similar problems, but people stay there because of the Mediterranean climate and the insane entrepreneurial culture in Illinois. You can just move 90 miles north to Wisconsin or southeast to Indiana for a similar climate, but way less tax liability. Even the Chicago Bears are looking at moving out of the city. And when your own NFL team wants to keep the name but leave the state, you're in trouble. Retirees are fleeing to Florida, Texas, or even California, where property taxes are actually lower than in Illinois. This movement has led to a population decline, meaning there are fewer people left to tax, so the remaining people have to pay even more. That is the definition of a doom loop. The bottom line is that while the system is as catastrophic as it was 10 years ago, we are one bad bear market away from a total meltdown. If the market can navigate this boomer transition without a major downturn, we might just limp through. But for states like Illinois, the constitutional prohibition on reform is a massive wall. It doesn't matter if you are red or blue. Plenty of blue states like Vermont and New York have managed to keep their systems relatively solvent. The unique political bind here in Illinois is putting everyone in a very tight spot. It's a fascinating, if slightly terrifying, look at how math eventually catches up with politics. Peace and love to everyone trying to navigate this, but you need to be aware of the ground you are standing on. I'm going to open it up to some QA now because I know you guys